Next order of business is roll call of members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, tally roll.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Sessions. Thank you for continuing to join Blake Johnson and I as we take you behind the curtain a little bit in terms of what goes on at the State House during session and also what happens after session in between. We are the state of Indiana, and we are on a 2-year budget cycle. So every 2 years, we have to, as a state and as a legislature, create and pass a budget. On today's show, we are joined by Representative Greg Porter. He is the ranking minority member of Ways and Means, which means really for the Democrats, the House Democrats, he is the lead representative on our side of working on the budget. And so we're going to talk to him a little bit about what happened this past session and also talk to him about some preparation for the coming budget year, which is next year. So Representative Porter, thank you for joining us. Greg. I forgot. We just talked about not going by representative, and I blow it. I got into TV host mode.
We just, and towards the end of session, Greg, we started getting in the habit of just chanting his name every time we saw him.
Give me a break, guys. What's going on here?
All right. Well, let's start off before we talk about the future. Tell us about, what were your impressions and thoughts as we come out of the 2024 session?
Well, I tell you, the 2024 session, from my window, left a lot to be desired. We could have done more in regards to taking care of the human infrastructure here in the state of Indiana. It was supposed to be a do-nothing session, per se, with not a lot of social issues. However, that erupted to more social issues, Blake, that we really wanted to have. And from that perspective, it's kind of disappointing. But yet still, we in Indianapolis, we had a few victories because we were able to stop some things. But we were also, and I call it, and people may not know this, I call it Unigov 2.0. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it was Unigov 2.0 was because now when the downtown taxing district, the governor of the state of Indiana controls downtown on the most part, which is nowhere else in the state of Indiana occurs. So that's pretty disheartening to me.
Yeah. So
look to the future. There'll be an article coming about Unigov 2.0.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting because we talked on the last episode about the Blue Line stuff, but the Economic Enhancement District piece of this it was interesting, right? So the EED repeal happens in the House, the Senate adjusts it, so there's still a taxing district. Obviously, it's not ideal and not quite the way we would have imagined it. On the Blue Line thing, it was the Senate had the bill, they sent it to us, and we were able to address it.
Right.
So what's your impression? You see that kind of back and forth between the Senate and the House. Every once in a while, the outcome is in our favor, where each chamber kind of does its part to chip away at bad legislation.
Well, it's very interesting because I've been there for a while, and the upper house, which is the Senate, they feel they can fix everything. And I have to tell them repeatedly, and with Jeff Thompson in Ways and Means, and I tell Jeff, I'm going Jeff, why are we letting them dictate to us? So what my goal is always be cognizant that we're 100 members, they're 50, we have just as much right as they have. And, we're just as smart as they are. But
smarter.
Smart. 50 more smarter than they are. Okay,
yeah, that's right.
So
no one of us is better than all of us.
That's right.
Smith, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but when I think about that, it was very interesting because what occurs sometimes, either in a House or a Senate, that said author becomes extremely arrogant and begin to become divisive within their own party, and they get kind of slapped around. That's what happened this time also. But, there are times in which you play who's going to do what first. You play cat and mouse, per se, for lack of a better term. It's like, okay, and I joke, I said, well, we at the conference committee, well, what you going to do? well, what you gonna do? Well, what you gonna do? I mean, really. I mean,
That's right.
Is that
schoolyard?
Type of situation? There's a level of schoolyard in regards to that. So I think all in all, we had some small victories, but we have to really understand what those long-term outcomes are going to be. But we have to stay very deliberate, and we have to stay focused on long-term goals. Let me tell you this. When the General Assembly meets, these people come in and they have the greatest ideals in the world. But yet some of those people are only around a very short time, and those missteps don't occur until they are gone. And then we have to come back as a body, try to fix those missteps. And even with, the enhancement district, what occurred there in the apartment association, raising all that sand, but they gonna benefit. But like I tell everybody that I talk to, they get frustrated. I said, check out where the money goes, and you find out who gets what and why it happens. But you asked me one quick question, I kind of went on.
No, I got one more follow-up. Amongst the victories was the 13th check.
Oh, that's
So just speak to that. You've been talking. I mean, as long as I've been there, that's something you've fought for.
Right.
That's something that's been a part of the Democratic agenda. Also, I mean, you got a couple of Republicans that were instrumental in that as well. What's your kind of take? 13th check finally.
I am so ecstatic about the 13th check. Of our whole family structure of the Democrats, that's probably one. It was maybe 2 or 3 things that came out that we not necessarily won, but we were victorious on. Because sometimes I don't want people. We gotta understand. It's about the people. It's about the teachers and about people the public employees who are retired. And that was a huge victory for them because they hadn't had anything in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. They being the public retirees.
Public retirees, I apologize. Yeah. They hadn't had anything. And that, even though it's not a 13th check, not a whole check, but even that $200 or $300 that they get means a lot because that is a bill that they can pay. That's something that they can help catch up. It's a catch-up dollars.
It's planned money.
Yeah, it is. So, and the key thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, is that the money was there. There was over $250 million plus in that pot, but they refused to let it go. It was there. It was nothing that you had to have in a budget. It was there. So let the people have their dollars. So, Representative Cherry, I give him a lot of credit on that. I was a second author. I've been talking about, as you said, Blake, forever and a day. So we finally got it through. And if the key thing is about it, if you really want something, let a retiree carry it. Because a retiree that's going to lead the General Assembly is going to retire. They say, well, we're going to give him this or give her that because they're walking out the door. Yeah,
Bob Cherry amongst the members who were leaving the chamber for the final time. It's a good strategy.
Yeah, it's a good strategy. I mean, other person, God rest his soul, was Gutwein. Gutwein had a rare disease that for testing of babies and never did it. But as soon as Gutwein got onto it and he wanted to do it, we passed it, and it was something that we had worked on also. So it's going to be very interesting over the next biennium to see who comes in and what type of atmosphere and leadership that's going to reticulate over the next biennium.
Yeah. So I serve on Ways and Means with you, and you lead us House Democrats through that process. Yeah. You've been on Ways and Means for quite a while, RMM, Ranking Minority Member, for quite a while. On the Republican side, the new chair of Ways and Means is Chairman Thompson. So this was his second year in. How has it been working with him, knowing that you have a lot more background in your leadership role in Ways and Means, and he coming in relatively new, because he was not on Ways and Means before he became the chair? Right.
But however, I tell people this is, even though he wasn't on Ways and Means per se, he was over the formula for education. So,
former teacher.
Former educator. And through the subcommittee process, he helped formulate the dollars that's going to public education or education in general.
Yeah.
So which is 52% of the budget. So he's halfway there when you start working on that. And you got to understand that all the budget that we have, you're just basically, you have a template and you add or you subtract from that template of the dollars that are the revenues that we have within the state. Mm-hmm. So working with Jeff has been more transparent than the previous individual. And having said that,
notice he did not say a name.
The previous individual, so no, because we just want to forget it. And he was not that disruptive only to us as Democrats, but really across. Across, he took no prisoners. If it wasn't his way, it was not going to happen. Yeah. And I think one thing that we also have to realize this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the speaker also drives the agenda of Ways and Means. Mm-hmm. Do not think it is all Thompson or his team or the 23 people that sit on there. The speaker has a lot of influence also. And I work with the speaker back in the two bienniums ago when the other Doc Brown, call his name, had his accident, mm-hmm. and so it was very meaningful.
Mm-hmm. So, as the ranking minority member of Ways and Means, what do you really? I mean, we know it's a leadership role, but give us a little bit more in-depth knowledge of what that's like, leading us House Democrats and working on the budget. I use the word entertaining because dealing with the Republicans is like double Dutch. Sometimes, no, really, because we in, then you're out, then you in, then you're out. Now, when it comes to Democrats, my thing is to see what the Democrats want, how I can help get those projects done in those said communities, because we have to constantly remind them we represent the entire state of Indiana. Yeah. Our constituents are your constituents, and your constituents are our constituents. We got, 6+ million people that we have to take care of. Mm-hmm. And you have to have that posture, because once you become so self-serving, you don't do the right thing for all individuals. And that's when the Senate comes in, so, this is what you guys did, and then they'll change it. Because I had, one senator say to me last year when something's going on and I was not happy about it, I said, do you trust me? I said, to a certain degree. He said, leave it up to me, I'll take care of it. So I learned from former Representative Crawford a long time ago, go over there and talk to the Senate, because they can sometimes be more of your ally than the House. Mm-hmm. But we gotta be healthy schizophrenics, as I tell people. You gotta talk. You need to talk to everyone, because if you talk to everyone, somebody's gonna align themselves to you, and you're gonna get something.
Another interesting thing about the job, and you've been there quite a while, so maybe you can speak to this, is, I forget who told me, but they say...
You treat me like a dinosaur.
No,
man.
Sir. I have just great reverence. It's all from great reverence. The idea that there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies.
Just permanent.
You're someone who I think embodies an approach where, like, you don't pull punches. You go up and you say what you got to say, you fight the fight, but you've also found a way to maneuver and work with folks, and I think everybody respects you immensely. How have you made that happen over the course of your career?
Well, it takes a while. I work for Frank O'Bannon, and one thing about Frank O'Bannon, who was a former lieutenant governor serving in the Senate, and working with him, being around here, driving the car around him, and some other community leaders, is that you got to be a statesperson. You got to be a statesman. Now, I use statesperson because I want to be right. And you got to learn. Sometimes you got to put your ego at the end of the parking lot, and you got to look at the greater good. If you continuously look at the greater good, that means that you're going to have some positive outcomes. And I was telling a young person, it was a Republican, African American, this past week, and he was really, last week or so, really upset. I said, let me explain something to you, because I'm going to pass this on to you. I said, when things get really tough and you don't know what's going on, go to the balcony, look down, if people are dancing or whatever, catch the beat. When you see which way they're moving and what their attitudes are, then you rejoin the party, and then you'll fit in. But if you just go down there, you're totally offbeat, you're not going to get anything. And, he's looked at me, I like that. And that's what I do. What I do is, okay, where do we agree? And how far do we go? Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, this is where I know this is going to be it. And now I got to figure out how to get what I can for the greater good, our common ground. And one word that we don't use a lot is the word compromise. It's beginning to come back a little better, but the word compromise was obsolete for the last 8 years or so.
Well, and we talk about the Indianapolis issues. Both the EED and the Blue Line involved that word, right? Involved compromise.
Oh, yes. Right.
You also really are laying out what we need to keep in mind, especially in the super minority, is strategy.
Right.
It's not just trying to be a bull in a china shop or whatever, but there's strategy that goes into getting things done. And bringing in the compromise word as well, you may not get 100%, but you got some percentage of, and it's still a victory.
Right, it is. And another thing that we have to do, when we do get those victories, we got to make sure that they don't take away those victories in another year or two. Mm-hmm. There's a legislator that's in education. When it comes to cultural competency and a lot of things like that, and equity, we get them in, and then 2 or 3 years, they take them out. And so it's pretty tough. So we can get them in, but we have to be cognizant on that they stay in. Those issues that are important to Democrats in the minority.
Yeah. So let's dive into next year. We still have some time here on the show. 2025 is a budget year. Give us some general details in terms of what the budget looks like, cost amount, all that stuff, breakdown, and also just a little bit of what you're thinking about in terms of next year.
Well, our budget revenue sources come from sales tax, it comes from income tax, corporate taxes, and the gaming dollars. So those are our 4 main resources. So revenues are up. Right now we're about $400 million above revenue forecast, and it ends in June 30th. So July 1 is our next fiscal year. So right now we're doing okay, but remember we got April coming up, and so people file their taxes, so money will be going in and out. Mm-hmm. So I think we have a $44 billion budget right now, $45 billion budget. I think the next go around will probably go up to about $46 billion, maybe 47. But also in that budget of those 4 things that we have, we also get those federal dollars, Medicaid. So that's also part of it. So, if we're $400 million up right now, and it won't change that much. We'll be able to look at what happens in December forecast, and then look at the April forecast of 2025. So we'll know a lot more. I mean, we'll start working on the budget beginning in September when organizations come in and present their budget. And then we'll look at those reversions out there. You've heard us talk about reversions that were diversions in regards to Medicaid. So that's the process. And when we talk about that, Earl and Blake, you've heard me talk about there's like 4 bites of the apple, of the economic apple. The governor presents his budget, and then the House, the Republicans present their budget. Then the Senate presents their budget. Then we come back with the last budget, which is the compromise budget. So we have 4 bites of the apple. So everybody gets exercise. I said, don't get exercise just because everything doesn't really happen until the last 48 hours of the General Assembly when you had that template. So I think, because we had the infusion windfall from federal dollars to RIFA, a lot of things we were able to do. But I don't think that those dollars would be there anyway. I mean, inflation's down to about 3%, which is good. So, people are doing things no matter what the national media talk about how horrible things are. It's just the way it is. Things are going up. Gas is going to go up. Food's going to go up. And people are beginning to make a little more money. So, that's just the way it is. It's not. It's just the mood of this nation in this world.
As you look to the next budget, what are you hoping for? What are your kind of priorities? You mentioned human infrastructure being a missed opportunity, not just this year, but I think you'd mentioned that even in the previous budget. Mm-hmm. As you look to 2025, where are your priorities going to be?
My priority is to be in 2025 is to look at the attendant care and look at people that are with disability, children with disabilities. Make sure that they are really taken care of, that we have real funding for schools. And we have to remember, last time charter school, voucher schools got like a 72% increase. So right now, the $400 million that we did for vouchers, some people like them, some people don't, is a tax cut for the rich. They send their kids to private school. So you got $400 million plus there. That's entitlement now. Mm-hmm. That wasn't there before. Mm-hmm. So that's $450 million now that we have to take care of those schools for those students that may receive vouchers. So we have to understand the whole complexity of when it comes to education. I really wanted like pre-K to really fund pre-K because of legislation that we passed about retaining of students. If we don't have full-day kindergarten or really fully fund preschool, we continue to manufacture a loss for those students that need that extra help and not make pre-K be a pilot. Mm-hmm. We gave $5 million to it the last time. That's nothing.
The jury's no longer out on the effectiveness of early childhood education. No, exactly. But we continue. We got to keep thinking about it, keep studying it, even though it is absolutely a proven element that'll fix a lot of the third grade reading issues and literacy issues. Rather than holding kids back, we could do it on the front end and fix the problem.
Exactly.
That would be logic, though.
Yeah, that's too logical, isn't it? But everyone else does. So they always talk about, everything's driven by statistics. What statistics say? Well, yeah, let's look at the statistics. Look at the work that was done by Western Michigan back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. In the 19th century, they talked about pre-K. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the 21st century, and we're still trying to catch up. I served on the committee at Harvard talking about early education in 2010, 2009, 10, and 11. Mm-hmm. Studies are there. Facts. Harvard, Stanford, that was the people, but we still don't want to do it. Yeah. It's just we just gotta have the will. When we have the money, we just have to have the will to make it happen.
I've been around Greg enough now that I knew exactly what he was going to say. We gotta have the will to do it. We gotta have the will to do it.
Yeah. So we know. So we're Indiana. 2 years, every 2 years, a budget. And I think you said this earlier, but about 50% of that goes into education. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of how we direct those funds in the correct direction to make sure that they're the most effective.
Right. And it's English is a second language. We know we have there. It's very complex, but it's attainable. Yeah. And we just make it attainable for everyone. And years ago they used to talk about the middle class. Well, the middle class is beginning to shrink a lot, and we begin to have the haves and have-nots. If you are in the right arena, if you're in the right area, you may have it. If you're not, you will not have it. And so with education, even higher ed, this beginning to cry. Even what they did this past year, we got to look at, people got to understand what has occurred in regards to higher ed and the attainability of our students, and teachers being there, the professors having tenure. What is really going on there? Mm-hmm. And it's creating the little buzzword is that now is the kids have to learn what they can learn, not what they are manufactured to learn, something like that. I can't remember that term they use now, but it's very interesting the buzzwords from these national groups like ALEC and the Koch brothers, and they have enough money to do the PR to continue to drive it home. Because if you hear enough, you're going to start believing it yourself, even though you know it's not right.
The sowing, the idea is that we're kind of sowing these seeds of doubt in the fidelity of higher ed. And I think the word indoctrination, they talk about we're indoctrinating students
that's
rather than teaching them what to learn rather than how to learn, all those kind of things. My background was in talent for quite a while, about thinking about how do we ensure that we're filling our skills gap, that people want to stay here, that people want to choose here as it relates to jobs, because the reality now is that people are choosing their community before they're choosing the job that they go to.
That is correct.
And if we're chipping away at higher education, if we're making a tax on local government and kind of self-determination of local municipalities, especially those that are controlled by progressive parties, right? We're actually hurting our talent initiatives pretty dramatically as well. So it's kind of a dangerous game we're playing.
It's a dangerous game, and you're right that we're suppressing our talent. But for those of the power elite, they don't care because they got theirs, and they want to take America back again. And they want to have it on their own unified perceptive world, which permeates a totally different atmosphere. Is I call it a gated community without the gate.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes people, they climbed up the ladder and then they turn around and pull the ladder up before anybody else gets their opportunity.
Exactly.
And so we have to keep that in mind. When I know we're running close to the end of the show here. I want to talk a little bit more about the budget. So we have I think you used the word template. We have hard things that are in the budget that we know we have to have in there for education, healthcare, et cetera. But how does it go in terms of people getting additional new initiatives into the budget to get them funded?
Well, conference committee. It happens during conference committee.
Yeah, there it is again.
Again, because last year, last biennium, we wound up with almost $3.8 billion, over $3 billion in revenues above what we thought we had. And they wound up doing like 5 or 6 projects. We got money in South Bend. We got money up in Warsaw, $30 million for the project. Got $30 million down by the Ohio River. We took, instead of bonding anything, we want to pay cash for everything, which sounds great. But the first thing when you think about the budget, they come back and say, we're a AAA bond and we have a balanced budget. Well, if you have a AAA bonding, why not bond?
Yeah.
Okay, but they don't want to do that. But they first thing they say, so what? We have a AAA bond, but we're not bonding anything. But to get things in the budget it depends on the economic. Now, this year we opened the budget in a unique way. If you remember some of the items talking about, well, next year we're going to look at this. We're going to look at these 4 or 5 items. Well, what they've done is called augmentation. So that's their new word. So even though we're not doing anything, but we're looking at augmentation for next year. And so you plant that seed and you water it over the summer, and you hope that it gets in during the session, and you present a bill, and you may have some discussion, and then you work across both the hallways and then try to get it in the bill in the end.
So Greg, as we think about sine die, the forthcoming budget session, but there's a period of time in between when we get out and when you all start. Could you just talk about the interim a little bit and the work that happens from legislators during that time? Well,
during that time, like the budget committee, I sit on the budget committee. So the budget committee, we'll have 2 or 3 meetings. So we'll spend the money that we have, but then we'll start hearing from departments about what they need. And the interim is very important, but it's not important like it used to be, because the interim used to start, if you remember your dad, Earl, that we would start interim, and Stan Jones was around also. We would start in June, okay? Now the interim study committees don't start till August, because they don't want to really do anything. They spend that time to figure out what they want to, and then just kind of massage it and manipulate the interim study committee to reflect what they want. And there are very, very few interim study committees now that come out with recommendations.
Yeah.
They don't come out with
Yeah, it's
recommendations.
a little performative.
Yeah, right. So I mean, so they've changed the narrative in regards to interim study committees. So you have them, but you really don't. It's just like, well, we're gonna put you in the ingredients, but we're not gonna bake it.
Kind of like a conference committee meeting.
Okay, you're right. So, which is fine. Now, the committee that is going to be very interesting is a 2-year committee. It's two committees along with some others, particularly the Medicaid Oversight Committee, which is by legislators. So I sit on that also, which is very, which is look at Medicaid and $1 billion that the shortfall, which is $700 million, and really about $700 to $1 billion, and that is because we diverted a lot of those money to do other things. And the SALT committee, which is looking at giving up income taxes, which is an $8 billion increase, $8 billion going toward the state revenue.
And there'll also be some road funding conversations over the summer, right?
Oh,
so
absolutely.
That's a big piece of it, which I think is, obviously instructive to you and I as road.
Right, you guys at road committee, there's going to be something, and I think even the speaker even kind of alluded to it in his own unique way about the wheel tax or something. Is that what was going on? So they are very, they've already kind of put it out there about the flavor of what's going to happen during the interim until we get back after the November election, and that's that second week in November.
Greg, we got just a few minutes left, and I asked a question our previous guest, Mitch Gore, who was in. The end of this year and this session marks also the end of the 123rd General Assembly. How many sessions has this been for you now?
Oh, I just completed my 16th session.
Okay, so a little bit of time, not dinosaur-like, but worthy of reverence.
Don't call him old.
Worthy of reverence. As you think about the end of this session, what's kind of some reflections? Obviously, your thinking's probably changed over the years. How do you look back now on this last legislature, but also just kind of the time leading up to this one? On
this last legislative session, because of the numbers, is really different. When the other for the last 10 years, it's been very different. But previous years, when the numbers were closer and people had to talk, I think everyone came out relatively decent. I think, I know from this session coming forth, it was hard. It was at the end. I wasn't happy. I was very disappointed as a legislator about what did not happen, what could have happened. One of my biggest disappointments was the attendant care for the children who need services, and how
we even had a press conference as House Democrats.
Right, we had a press conference about that. How the attendant cares are going to be versus structured care is just not getting funded, and these are children that have trachs and food, and they're very ill. But when I talk to the leadership on the Republican side, I've learned so much about it, but what did we do about it? And I spent more time. I didn't file any bills because I got involved in this, but you didn't do anything. The providers are doing 80%. That's interesting, but they're not died. So when you try to get money to the families to keep children out of the hospital, all right, and some of our children, and they are children, they're not going to live that long. So it's nothing that's forever and a day. It's just a quality of life that these families that are Hoosier families that pay taxes, they deserve. And so that really bothered me to that point. And there are other things over the years, but this one, maybe because it's more recent and it was more hands-on, and I saw them. And even yesterday, the governor signs all these bills. They were there to say these children. What are you going to do about that? And I'd be darned that he's just oblivious to the whole point. I don't know who in the heck he has advising him, but he doesn't have any children always. But I know it's just very disheartening. I just leave it at that because I got to calm down.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you as a member of Ways and Means. Thank you for your leadership on Ways and Means.
I appreciate you.
And everything you do in terms of the budget. And thank you for joining us and giving us some insight. We know that 2025, again, is a budget year, and there's going to be a lot of action going on. And a lot of people, as you said, really focusing on some of those areas that we're not taking care of. And hopefully we can get some help for a lot of people, as we should do. So thanks for joining us on this edition of Session. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having me.